Today I'm over at Home Hardware and we're talking with my good friend Sean, the manager, and explaining something I've come across recently that is becoming a problem because so many chimney companies are so similar. People are mixing, matching different types of chimneys. So here you got a ceiling support kit that is designed for use only with Model CF chimney. But this box here is flat on the bottom and the chimney slides through, and then there's a metal band on the chimney that holds that chimney in the box. So recently I inspected a place that had the wrong chimney inside this box. So what they did was they bought the chimney and they didn't have the ceiling support. So, oh, that's no problem, we'll run over to Home Hardware, we'll grab it there. But the problem is that this chimney is 10.5 inches in diameter and the other chimney is only 10 inches in diameter. So by the time you put that band on here, this band on a 10-inch chimney, it's just about falls through the hole. And of course, if there's ever a fire, you have no insurance because you're not using factory components. So make sure that you do it right. You know, if you are putting in chimney components and stoves, wood stoves or fireplaces, you have to use the manufacturer's information and only use one type of chimney component. So if you're buying Selkirk chimney, buy Selkirk parts. But even that gets complicated because there's more than one brand of Selkirk chimney. And I'm going to show you today one example of that. So let's have a look. We got the wood stove and it's going up through the ceiling, but you can also see how that band is not even touching. If it wasn't for this little clip over on this side, that chimney would fall right through. You know, it's a 10.5 inch hole, and you know, if it got really windy and the chimney was moving around, could it fall through? I don't really know for sure. Probably not because of that little piece, but you can imagine how unsafe this is. And the manufacturer says, if you don't use all the right components, we are not going to warranty the chimney. And the insurance company says, if you don't use all the right components, and we are not going to insure your house. So it's really important to get it right. So what happened in this scenario was someone went and bought the ceiling support at one store, said, oh, that's a Selkirk. And then they went over to another store and they bought the chimney, and that's a Selkirk, but this is a super vent chimney, which has a 10-inch diameter. And this is a Model CF ceiling support, which is a 10.5 inch opening. So it doesn't match. And again, if you know, you can just imagine the fact that it's not safe, but you can imagine also the temperature that's going to come through this hole on a cold, windy day. So it's -17 outside right now, and I go to the coldest part right here, and we're down to, you know, in the -2, -3, -4. If the wind picks up, you can imagine that's going to move a lot of air into this room unintentionally. So it's important to get it done right. I'm going to switch the chimney out to the proper chimney today, and I'll take some more video then of the proper install, the proper chimney, and just show you how much tighter everything will be. So the first step in putting the new chimney back in properly is to take the Model CF chimney, take the metal band, put it on the desired point of where you want the chimney to stick through the ceiling. It's important that you do a minimum of whatever the manufacturer recommends, and I think with Model CF it's 3 inches. We're going to go 5 inches. That's putting us way down below the ceiling, and I did that because that's where the old chimney was, and it'll match up with the black pipe easier. But there's no well, there might be a minimum. Obviously, you're not going to go more than 3 feet, but you could go 10 inches if that's what you want it to do. But you can't make it flush. It says that there has to be a minimum. I think this chimney, I read somewhere, it has to be 1 inch below, 1 inch through the ceiling support. So we're going to go 5 inches. The other thing, you've got to make sure that you make that 5 inches exact, right? So this isn't quite 5. I'm going to tap that a little bit, get that exactly 5, because I made it exactly 5 on the other side. Why is that important? If you get this crooked, the chimney sits in the box crooked. So we want to make sure that that's right. Okay, so now I've screwed this in on this band only, not on the other side. And the reason I did that is I want to tighten this band up. I don't want to over tighten it, but I want it to tighten up tight around the chimney. Now that I've got the components level, then I'm going to tighten it up, and then I'm going to put the rest of the screws in. I just want to reiterate, when you're tightening up the band, don't use a power drill or anything like that to tighten it up. Make sure that you don't over tighten it. So in this case, I've got it in about 1/2 inch of thread showing, and then I check the other side, about 1/2 inch of thread showing, so it's equal amounts. It's tight. If you over tighten it, you're going to crush the chimney and you're going to wreck that piece and potentially, have a hot spot, for instance. So make sure you do not over tighten it. Okay, so I've got the band tightened up. All the screws are in there. That should hold several feet of chimney. I'm not going to quote exactly how much. All that stuff's in the manual. Now we're going to put this flue pipe adapter. So it's taking you from the stainless steel factory built chimney, high temp 2100 degree Fahrenheit chimney, down to the black pipe, which is a different component. So therefore we have to adapt to it. So this is called the flue pipe adapter, this piece. We're going to put this on. I have to say I don't really like the way Model CF is done. It's very sharp. Got to be careful not to cut yourself. These little tabs right here, this is where this is going to slide. This band is going to slide over. You're going to be frustrated with it like everybody else is, but just take your time and be careful your hands don't slip, especially when it's cold outside like it is today. It's going to be very difficult to get it tight. The other thing that I do personally is I put a screw on either side of this. Once I get this tight, it usually can't get it all the way to the third set of tabs here. So what I try to do is I'll put one screw in it, usually on this side over here, and that'll get me that extra clip. It'll clip right into so it's at its tightest, right? So you want this tight. If you don't put this piece on, and when you turn this chimney upside down, this piece is going to fall out. And it's important that you get it done right, because what if this piece is sitting like that when you put it in the chimney? Now you've got a spot where it's not seated down properly and potentially a hot spot. We want to avoid hot spots, so make sure you get it right. If you put the band on and it won't close, it's because something's not tight enough. This way usually, but sometimes it's other issues. So make sure that you get the band up in there. It fits into this groove right there, and then it fits on top, and you tighten it up and it should be a good tight fit. Well, tight as can be. This piece here is loose, generally speaking, and there's not a lot you can do about this, the way it's manufactured. I've complained about that in the past, but it's still like that. However, we're going to snap this together and I'll show you what I mean. So I've got the band on here and it looks like it's in position, holding the two pieces together well, but I can only get it on the first set of nibs here. So again, I'm going to put a screw in here. It's going to pull this a little bit tighter in, pull everything down tighter together, and I think I'll be able to get more on there. Once I get that on there a couple, or to the end preferably, then I'm going to put another screw in here. Again, don't over tighten. This is not the type of material that you can get, brute force and ignorance. It doesn't help with this type of an install. All right, I've got my two screws in. I was able to get another set of notches on here. Everything's tight. Nothing's going to fall apart. So we're good to go. So next we're going to drop the ceiling, the chimney through the ceiling into the box, and our band should stop it from falling through, and it should be a fairly tight fit. Okay, so you can see down inside the box here, nice tight fit, and the clamp is holding the chimney from falling through. So now you can see that support is properly holding that chimney in place. The right chimney for the right ceiling support, a lot tighter, and I bought some high temp silicone caulking black that I will give that little bead of caulking around there as well to stop the drafts. So now the next step, and I made this mistake is by putting this on too soon, but it was a good way to demonstrate that how this piece is installed. It's easier to put it on down below, but unfortunately it will not fit through that opening after you put the band on. So we have to put it on from down below. So I'm going to fit that up in there and do that same procedure once again. It's good to have two people if you have them available, but you can do it by yourself if you have to. Okay, I have put up the flue pipe adapter into the chimney, and I've used the black band that comes with the kit instead of the silver one. It wouldn't matter, they're both the same. One of the things you'll notice is that I put the clamp at the back, just for aesthetics. It doesn't matter, it can go any position, but it's best if you put it at the back. And the other thing that I've done is up on the roof, I've made sure that the seam is pointed away from where people can see. It's a pretty tight looking seam, it's welded nice, but Some of them are not so nice. It's always best to put the seam away from view from the ground. So now that the trim ring's been installed, we're done with the inside part of the chimney install. Next, we got to go up and add another length of chimney. Make sure that it's 2 feet out of the roof, 3 feet out of the roof, and 2 feet higher than anything within 10 feet. So that's the next step. Okay, so now we're at the next step. This is the old chimney here, and this is the new chimney we're putting in because this is the chimney that was designed, again, for this box, and you can't mix and match manufacturers. So you can see how this chimney cap fits on top. It slides inside, and then these tabs go on the outside, and then this metal ring goes around these tabs to hold it in place, and you screw it tight. And you can see here that they've had to shorten this because this chimney is not as big a diameter as this chimney. So don't modify things. If you're unsure, how something goes together, then call the manufacturer, call somebody like myself, an installer. Maybe we can help you over the phone. But doing this is a really good indication you got the wrong parts. And I think that they probably knew they had the wrong parts, but they weren't going back to the store to get something different. They figured it was good enough. And you know what? I'm not going to say that it would have caught fire the way it was. But again, I'm going to reiterate that insurance companies will look for flaws in the install if the wood stove causes a fire. And if it's not installed as to manufacturer specifications, good luck trying to get an insurance. So just be aware of that. And if you're an installer or an inspector, don't cut corners, because they're going to sue you. The insurance company's going to come back to you if you don't do it right. So let's get her done right. Okay, final steps in putting the chimney in above the roof is to put the storm collar on and put a bead of caulking around that. And now I'm presuming you know how to do the flashing and all that. In this case, it was already there. But then the other last part you would do is put the chimney cap on, tighten it up. So the rule of thumb is to get the chimney at least 2 feet higher than anything within 10 feet. So this case, that would be the peak. This piece of chimney come out pretty much parallel with the peak. So I needed 2 more feet. Well, I put on 3 feet, so that's more than I need. The other rule is that you has to be a minimum of 3 feet out of the roof. So it would have to be 3 feet plus 2 feet higher than anything. If you're putting it on a roof that has quite a steep pitch and you're down near the bottom, you're going to have to be quite tall. Don't mistake the fact that you need to have it 2 feet higher than anything with understanding that to mean 2 feet higher than the peak. It doesn't have to be higher than the peak. It just has to be 2 feet higher than anything within 10 feet. You want the air to be able to move around the chimney very clearly and easily so that you get good draft. One final thing I want to encourage everyone to do with the Model CF Selkirk with the bands on it like this, make sure you put the screws in to hold it. I've seen lots of situations where this is not clamped tight. Oh, I guess I got to get down and show it better. It's not tight and there's no screws. The wind blows and it pops this thing off and the chimney falls off or it gets twisted. So make sure that you get it as tight as you can, put the screws in to hold it in place. So now we got the chimney in, we got to go to the black pipe and run it down to the stove. So a couple of things in this particular install that I noticed. First of all, you see that this piece here is slightly larger than the rest of the chimney. That's because the collar on this chimney is kind of cast iron and it's very thick. So the conventional pipe doesn't fit over top of it and they had to go and get a special adapter piece. That has got to be the most frustrating thing when you're putting in a wood stove, especially if it's wintertime and you really want to get using your stove. You can't do it because it won't fit. So a lot of people just modify it on site, but you're not supposed to. This is the way you're supposed to do it. You go and you buy the adapter piece. It frustrates me that the manufacturers cannot get a size that fits inside the conventional pipe. I don't know why they don't take a little more time to get that right. The other thing I notice in here is that it's got a flue pipe adapter in the pipe. A damper in the pipe. And that damper generally is not needed if the stove is in good shape. I'm not going to take it out of this pipe because I don't know whether or not it needs it. Maybe it was added afterwards because they found that the stove was not dampering down well and was burning up too fast, and they put that in there to slow the burn down. It's not required, and it's certainly not desired if the stove is good enough to damper the stove as it should. With the air controls on the stove, that should be all you need. But sometimes people have to put these in. I've seen situations where the draft is so strong because of the height of the chimney and the conditions outside. They have to put this in order to use the stove. So now this step here is one that a lot of people get wrong. You look at here and you can see there's 2 crimped sections of pipe. But a lot of people think, oh, well, that's two male ends that you don't want to put them together. But that's not the case. This is the way it has to go together. And if you're questioning it, then what you need to do is you need to look at the pipe itself and say, okay, which way does the arrow tell me that the pipe has to go? And that's the way the pipe has to go. There is this ugly crimp is up here. That's because it's double wall pipe, by the way. If it wasn't double wall pipe, you wouldn't see that crimp. But they do sell you a band, and the band is black, and it covers this up. In this scenario, I don't have that band. It's just for aesthetics anyway. But I don't have it because they must have thrown it away. It comes in the kit. Okay, so this next step is important that you get it right. Make sure that you get this pushed up on there as high as you can, and as much an overlap as you can. And then if I was to put the screw here, I couldn't be certain that I'm going to get my screw through this next piece. And a lot of people use the very short screws they provide for the rest of the chimney. Use a longer screw, like a 1 inch, and self-tapper. Very difficult to get it to work. And put it up higher so that you know you're getting a good bite. And you'll see when it pulls together, you'll notice it's pulling. You don't want to stop too soon, because sometimes it just bends that inside pipe, and if this ever fell off, it would be a catastrophe. Okay, I wanted to demonstrate here. So I've got it through the first piece, but you see how it's kinked in the other piece? I'm hoping that that's going to get sucked back out. Okay, see that? You want to make sure that that gets done that way. Okay, so you'll notice in my videos, I'm not trying to have everything all pretty and professional looking. This is the reality of what it is when you're doing a job like this. So, I was standing on the stove, and I'm going to clean that up before I leave the house, of course. But just wanted to point out a couple more things about the black pipe. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that if your pipe is going straight up, and that's the most ideal scenario, you want better draft, you have to have a slip joint here. I personally don't put screws in the slip joint. I know some people do. You can see these people did. But when I put the stove back in, I eliminated a piece. They had an extra piece at the top for no reason. So you have to be able to pull this down, okay, so that it fits on top of the stove. I don't know if I can move it now or not. Yeah, not easily. So basically, it's hard to video and do that at the same time. But this slides up and down. So as the stovepipe gets hot, it just slips inside itself. Now, the one rule that you have to bear in mind, I think it's 1 5/8 overlap minimum. And of course, if you can go with a foot, or this pipe right here is probably 3 feet long. So it's way up inside the pipe here. And if you had a taller ceiling, it'll go from, I believe, 38 to 68 inches, or 40 to 68 or something like that. So yeah, if you're going to go straight up, you must have that slip joint. I recommend the slip joint in every install, but if you have an elbow, you don't need it, because there's a bit of give in that elbow, and there's not a lot of expansion and contraction pressure. So one last comment here about the black pipe. You want to have it so that the male is on the top is inside the pipe coming down to the stove, so that any creosote that forms inside the chimney stays inside the pipe and it doesn't run down the outside of the pipe. So male on the top, female on the bottom underneath, and it goes all the way down like that. And then when you get here, you think, oh, well, creosote's going to run out here, but it doesn't with double wall pipe, because double wall, the inner layer is inside the stove flue collar. So now the pad on the floor here is like 1/4 inch plate steel, 3/16 maybe, it doesn't matter. What I find with these steel plates is that the stove tends to walk around. So if you're pushing on the stove to close it, you can see what can happen, right? So what we want to do is make sure that doesn't happen in any house, but in particular, you don't want it to happen in a mobile home, because the rules state that you have to have the stove fastened to the floor. So this stove comes with, it says on the label, first of all, that it's mobile home approved, and it comes with little cleats that go in over top of this foot, and then you can bolt it to the floor here. But either they didn't order them or they threw them away. I don't really know. Other inspectors will say, oh, I don't worry about whether it's anchored to the floor, but you can see how easy that stove moves. Or, you know, if something accidentally bumps up against it while it's hot and the chimney comes apart, hey, you got problems. So what I'm going to do is I've made up these big washers here, and I'm going to set them underneath and I'm going to epoxy them to the floor. And if that doesn't work, then we're going to put a screw right through to make sure that the stove can't